The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord was a monument to stagnation. Towering spires of obsidian steel and holographic banners floated in the domed hall, displaying the insignias of 57 alien species, all gathered in an eternal cycle of debate. The air was thick with the artificial scent of incense, a futile attempt to mask the stink of fear and arrogance. At the heart of it all sat Commander Dominic Riker, a man of war trapped in a suit of diplomacy. His gaze was steel, his posture rigid, his patience threadbare. He had endured years of this nonsense. Today, it ended. Chancellor Vore, a slug-like bureaucrat with a translucent, gelatinous body, slithered forward, his voice a phlegmy drawl. Once again, we appreciate humanity's passionate concerns, but I assure you, Commander Riker, there is no immediate cause for alarm. These so-called threats remain theoretical, mere speculation from an aggressive species prone to conflict. His multiple eyes blinked in condescension. Perhaps humanity simply misinterprets the data. You do have a tendency toward, how should I put this, paranoia. A few chuckles rippled through the chamber. Riker's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. Paranoia. He had watched the outposts fall. He had seen the black void consume entire worlds without a trace. He had read the last transmissions of human colonies screaming as the Erebus swarm tore through their defenses like a cosmic plague. And here they were, these bloated bureaucrats, laughing. He took a slow breath, his voice even, controlled like a loaded gun. We have provided sensor logs. We have shown you the wreckage. The Erebus are here, now. You don't have decades to debate. You have days before your borders start falling. He let the words settle, but the aliens didn't flinch. Their kind had never known war, not the way humanity did. A reptilian delegate, his scales glimmering with gold-plated arrogance, flicked his forked tongue. And yet, none of these phantom fleets have struck our territories. Convenient, isn't it? Perhaps this is a ruse to expand humanity's militaristic influence. Riker leaned forward, his gaze pinning the lizard to his seat. You think this is a human ploy? You think I enjoy wasting my time here while my people prepare for a war you refuse to acknowledge? If you had half the spine your ancestors did, you'd be mobilizing fleets instead of sitting on your tails, hoping the storm passes. The murmurs turned uneasy. No one spoke to the council like this. No one dared. But Riker didn't care. Chancellor Vore oozed irritation. Commander Riker, while your enthusiasm is noted, we cannot act on human assertions alone. If we were to commit forces to every imagined threat, the Concord would be bankrupt within the decade. Riker laughed. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous. Bankrupt? He stood, towering over the chamber. You think you're saving money by delaying? You're paying in time, and that's a currency you don't have. You want numbers? Fine. Humanity has pulled out 23 border fleets. We're fortifying our space because we know what's coming. And when it does, it won't knock on your doors, it will tear through them like wet paper. The Chancellor waved a slimy appendage dismissively. Fearmongering will not sway this council, Commander. If humanity chooses to act irrationally, that is your prerogative. But the Concord will not be dragged into another one of your species' violent crusades. We will take the matter under review and establish a subcommittee. The final insult. Riker exhaled slowly. His next words would change everything. We're done. The chamber stilled. Chancellor Vore's gelatinous body twitched. Excuse me? Riker straightened his uniform, his voice calm, deliberate, absolute. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Concord. Effective immediately. The chamber erupted into chaos. You can't do that, shrieked a feline diplomat, his fur bristling. Your infrastructure is tied to Concord trade. The human fleets are crucial to border security. This is reckless. This is madness. Riker ignored them. The decision had been made. The entire human delegation stood. Every representative. Every officer. Every liaison. Vor's multiple eyes bulged, his voice a wet gurgle. This is an unprecedented diplomatic catastrophe. You will be held accountable for this reckless decision. Riker met his gaze, eyes cold as the void. No, Chancellor. You will. He turned without another word, stepping down from the podium. His boots echoed against the polished floors, the sound final, irreversible. The moment he passed the chamber's threshold, every human followed. Ambassadors. Admirals. Economic envoys. Every single one of them. And in that moment, humanity ceased to exist within the Concorde. The fallout was immediate. The Galactic Concorde's networks flickered with urgent transmissions. Trade routes shut down overnight. Human-controlled hyperlanes, the arteries of interstellar commerce, went dark. Alien supply chains collapsed within hours. Within a single galactic cycle, the Concorde felt the weight of their mistake. But the worst came later. Because without human fleets guarding the frontier, the Erebus swarm descended. The Galactic Concorde reeled in disbelief. Humanity had left. Just like that. No negotiations, no final discussions, no compromises. They had simply stood up and walked out. And now, in the aftermath of their departure, the consequences hit like a collapsing star. The hyperlanes, the intricate web of trade and supply routes humanity had maintained, went dark. The seamless flow of interstellar commerce that the Concorde had taken for granted faltered, then crumbled. Planets dependent on human-engineered supply chains found themselves on the brink of famine. Entire economies teetered on collapse within a single galactic cycle. In the high chamber, the panic was palpable. The alien delegates, once so assured of their own authority, now spoke in desperate, hushed tones. Vor's gelatinous skin rippled with agitation as he struggled to control the chaos. We must establish emergency contingencies. We will reach out to the Drelzen Consortium to replace the human trade lanes. The Drelzen? A Zelvari ambassador scoffed, his bioluminescent tendrils dimming with frustration. They don't have the logistical capabilities. They're scavengers, not engineers. The humans built those lanes. The humans maintained them. They controlled the stabilizers, the refueling stations, the transit beacons. Without them, travel between sectors is going to take months, not days. Vor's body quivered, but he forced out a diplomatic smile. Then we will negotiate with the humans. Offer them incentives to return to the fold. A deep voice cut through the chamber, laced with contempt. You think they'll come back? All eyes turned to General Craddock of the Erdai Dominion. His crimson-scaled hands gripped the edge of the conference table, his yellow eyes narrowing into slits. You fools have no idea what you've done. The humans didn't leave out of emotion. They left because they planned to leave. You don't just walk away from an alliance like this without preparation. They have contingencies. They don't need us. We need them. Vor's face twisted into something resembling a forced chuckle. Oh, General. Humanity relies on interstellar trade as much as we do. This is a bluff, nothing more. They will return once they feel the economic strain. Craddock shook his head. You don't understand humans at all, do you? A sudden ping echoed through the chamber. A transmission. Every delegate turned toward the central display as the screen flickered, the Concorde's security channels overridden. The symbol that appeared was unmistakable, the sigil of the Terran Federation. A single message followed. Do not contact us. Do not follow us. You are on your own. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The meaning was unmistakable. Humanity wasn't reconsidering. Humanity wasn't negotiating. Humanity was gone. For the first time in the Concorde's history, a sense of dread spread across the gathered species. There was no precedent for this. No protocol. Every dispute had always ended with talks, compromises, deals. But now? The humans had thrown diplomacy aside, and the cracks were already forming. Trade was only the beginning. Within days, security collapses erupted across multiple sectors. The outer colonies, once shielded by human fleets, found themselves vulnerable to raids. Pirate factions, long kept in check by the iron grip of human naval patrols, struck in force. The Dravash warbands, long restrained by the presence of Terran fleets, saw an opening and invaded several Concord systems. The Council scrambled to respond. Deploy the Concord peacekeeping fleet. Increase patrols. Reallocate resources. It wasn't enough. Because, without humanity, they had no one capable of war. Humanity had always been the sword and shield of the Concord. While other species excelled in science, diplomacy, or trade, it was the humans who fought. They were the ones who understood violence, who had honed the art of war into something both brutal and efficient. While the Concord's admirals debated tactics in bureaucratic chambers, human captains had been out there winning wars. Now, without them, the Concord's forces were exposed. And then the Erebus swarm arrived. The first attack came without warning. A distress beacon flickered from Firaxis Prime, a prosperous world in the Mid-Rim territories. Then, silence. By the time a Concord fleet arrived, there was nothing left. No survivors. No wreckage. Only emptiness. It happened again at Kelmar Station. Then at Verdun 3. Entire colonies. Entire fleets. Gone. The Erebus didn't negotiate. They didn't demand. They simply devoured. The Concord panicked. Emergency councils were called. Defense strategies were hastily formed. But it was too late. The swarm moved too fast, hit too hard. The Concord's fleets, long accustomed to defensive posturing, were not built for total war. The Chancellor's voice trembled as he addressed the Council. We must open communication with the Terrans immediately. We must. They warned us, Craddock interrupted, his voice grim. And we laughed. The room fell silent. Because they all knew the truth. The humans had left them to die. The silence in the chamber was suffocating. Not the silence of contemplation, nor the measured pause of diplomatic decorum, but the suffocating weight of realization. The kind that came too late. The kind that made every delegate shift uncomfortably in their seats, their gazes darting to one another, searching for answers no one had. No one spoke of it, but they all knew humanity had been right. Chancellor Vore, once so smug in his dismissals, now trembled as he reviewed the reports. Firaxis Prime, Kelmar Station, Verdun 3, entire systems erased, fleets reduced to ghost signals. No distress calls, no wreckage, no survivors. Just nothing. It was as if they had never existed. The Erebus swarm didn't conquer. They didn't pillage. They consumed. General Craddock's claws scraped against the conference table as he exhaled slowly. We need to send a formal appeal to the humans. Beg, if necessary. His voice was steady, but there was something foreign in his tone. Fear. The kind no warrior ever wanted to feel. The kind that came when the enemy was no longer something you could fight. We can't hold them off. Our fleets are already breaking. Vore's gelatinous form quivered. We still have forces. We have allies. They're not enough, Craddock snapped. The humans were the only ones prepared for this kind of war. He turned to the chamber, scanning the gathered delegates, his slitted eyes burning with anger. We ignored them. Laughed at them. We let arrogance guide our decisions. And now? Now we're bleeding for it. The Chancellor wrung his appendages, desperation creeping into his voice. We don't have to surrender. We can still open talks with the Erebus, offer terms. Craddock laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. Terms? His claws flexed, his fangs bared. Did you see terms on Firaxis Prime? Did you see negotiations at Kelmar Station? He slammed his fist down. You blind, bloated fool, you still don't get it. The Erebus don't want peace. They don't want wealth, or power, or status. They want everything. And we just fed them an entire galaxy's worth of prey. Another delegate, a frail insectoid from the Zelvar Commonwealth, clicked its mandibles in distress. We must try. The humans must come back. They must. The room went quiet. They must. But would they? A transmission request came in, encrypted in old Concord diplomatic codes. Every screen flickered. Every voice hushed. The air tightened. Then, on the central display, the sigil of the Terran Federation appeared once more. The chamber held its breath. Then, the feed opened. Commander Dominic Riker stood in full combat regalia, his expression unreadable, his gaze like stone. His voice, when it came, was calm, measured, but behind it was the quiet rage of a man who had already made his decision. Request denied. The Chancellor flinched. See Commander Riker, You were warned. The words cut through the air like a blade. Vor's gelatinous form trembled. Please, you must listen. No. You listen. Riker leaned forward, his face filling the screen. For decades, humanity fought your wars, defended your borders, bled for your politics. We sat in your chambers and played by your rules while you mocked us, ignored us, treated us as brutes who didn't belong. And when we told you the storm was coming, you laughed. Vor's many eyes darted frantically. We were wrong. We admit it. You were more than wrong. Riker's tone sharpened. You were cowards. And now, when your worlds burn and your fleets crumble, you come crawling, hoping we'll save you. He exhaled, slow and deliberate. But we won't. The chamber erupted into protests. Voices overlapping in desperation. Pleas, bargaining, threats. Riker didn't react. He just watched. And when the noise died down, he spoke again. Humanity doesn't fight wars for fools who won't fight for themselves. We don't save those who threw us away. Vor's form sagged, his voice cracking. You can't mean that. You can't just. I can, Riker said simply. And I do. Then, with a final cold stare, he ended the transmission. The Concorde was alone. The chamber remained deathly silent long after the transmission ended. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of humanity's rejection settled over them like a suffocating fog. Vor sagged in his seat, his gelatinous mass quivering, his multiple eyes blinking erratically. The other delegates sat frozen, the realization settling in with terrifying clarity. Humanity wasn't bluffing. They weren't coming back. The Concorde was alone, defenseless, facing an enemy that did not negotiate, did not relent, and did not leave survivors. Craddock finally broke the silence, his voice low, rough, edged with a grim finality. We're dead. No one contradicted him. No one argued. It was the simple truth. The Erebus had already consumed 3 sectors in mere cycles. Without human fleets reinforcing the borders, without their brutal efficiency in war doctrine, the Concorde's forces had shattered under the first real offensive. What fleets remained were scattered, fragmented, unprepared for the kind of war they now faced. The Zelvar representative's mandibles clicked frantically as he turned toward Vor. We have to try again. Maybe another envoy, someone with. They've made their decision. Craddock cut in, his tone sharp enough to draw blood. We're wasting time begging for an army that will never come. He exhaled, flexing his claws against the polished table. We need to focus on survival. Vor's voice trembled. You speak as if there's a way out of this. There isn't, Craddock admitted. But I refuse to die whimpering. Another delegate, her pale blue skin glistening under the chamber lights, leaned forward, her voice shaking. We still have ships. We still have weapons. Ships that aren't built for prolonged warfare, Craddock countered. Weapons that won't matter when the Erebus overwhelm us with sheer numbers. He gestured toward the galactic map flickering at the center of the room. They aren't just attacking. They're expanding. They're evolving. Every fleet we've lost, every world they've taken, it's not just destruction. It's assimilation. They absorb everything into their swarm. Every ship they conquer strengthens them. Every battle they win makes them stronger. Vor's gelatinous body shifted uneasily. Then what do you suggest, General? If we are, as you say, already dead, what do you propose we do? Craddock's yellow eyes gleamed with something dark, something primal. We burn everything. A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. The insectoid delegate recoiled. You mean? If we can't win, we deny them. Craddock leaned in, his fangs bared. We glass every planet in their path. We destroy every ship we cannot use. We scorch the void behind us. If they take nothing, they gain nothing. The room erupted in protest. You're talking about erasing entire civilizations. This is madness. We are not butchers. Craddock let them rage. Let them fight. He waited until the protests died down, until the grim reality loomed over them again like an executioner's blade. This is the only way, he said, his voice quieter now, but no less firm. We don't have the numbers to fight them head-on. We don't have the humans to hold the line. But we can make sure the Erebus bleed for every system they take. Vor's voice cracked. We would be damning billions. Craddock's gaze was unyielding. Billions are already dead. More will die if we hesitate. We can mourn later. Right now, we have to deny them their victory. The chamber fell into a long, heavy silence. Then a shrill alarm tore through the air. Every display in the room flickered, warning signals flashing red. The automated defense network's synthetic voice echoed through the chamber. Alert. Multiple hostile signatures detected. Erebus swarm vessels entering core space. Major breach detected. High priority warning. Galactic Concord capital world under direct assault. Panic exploded. Delegates scrambled, voices rising into a cacophony of fear and confusion. The capital was under attack. Not a border world. Not a distant colony. The heart of the Concord itself. Craddock was already moving, barking orders into his communicator, rallying what little remained of their defenses. But he knew, it was too late. The Erebus had come to finish them. The alarm shrieked across the capital as the skies darkened. The Erebus had arrived, and there was no time left for diplomacy, no time left for plans, no time left for anything but survival. Craddock was already moving, forcing his way through the panicked mass of officials, his claws gripping the communicator tight. All available fleets, mobilize now. Defensive positions around the capital. Prioritize civilian evacuations, deploy ground defenses. We hold this line or we all burn. Vor was still in his seat, frozen in disbelief. His gelatinous form sagged, eyes darting in frantic terror. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not like this. Craddock snarled. It was always going to happen. You were just too damn blind to see it. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screaming. Orders being shouted across broken comm channels. Reports flooding in, the Erebus weren't just invading, they were overwhelming. The planetary shields flickered as thousands of enemy signatures swarmed like a black tide. The outer defensive stations crumbled in minutes, their last transmissions cut off in bursts of static. Craddock shoved past fleeing officials, his mind running through the limited options they had left. There weren't any. The Erebus had come in numbers beyond anything the Concord had prepared for. The fleets were scattered, their best ships either destroyed in previous engagements or too far to reinforce in time. There was only one path forward. He punched into the emergency broadcast. All Concord forces, fall back to the core defensive grid. Prioritize heavy bombardment. Do not allow Erebus forces to land. If they breach the capital, we burn it. Another voice crackled through the comms. It was Admiral Vekran, one of the last competent military commanders left in the Concord. His voice was strained, the sound of battle raging in the background. General, We can't hold them. They're tearing through our lines like paper. They're adapting. Every ship we lose, they twist into their own. We hit them with everything we had, and they learned. They're already countering our weapons. Craddock gritted his teeth. The Erebus were consuming everything they touched, integrating it into their swarm. It was no longer just an invasion, it was a spread. A disease that was eating the Concorde alive. We need an evacuation protocol, Vekran continued. Priority extraction of key personnel. If we can't hold the capital, we can at least get. A violent explosion cut off the transmission. Silence. Then, a new voice. Erebus. It slithered through the comms, deep, guttural, alien. You run. You fight. You break. You delay what cannot be stopped. Craddock's blood ran cold. They were listening. The transmission ended. The skies outside the chamber flared as the planetary shields collapsed. Fire rained down as Erebus dropships punched through the last defenses. They weren't invading. They were consuming. Craddock turned, eyes blazing. If you want to live, you follow me. Now. He grabbed Vor by the arm, dragging the quivering Chancellor with him as the chamber behind them crumbled under the first wave of impacts. The halls were already flooded with fleeing officials, security forces struggling to hold any form of line. It was mayhem. Outside, the city was turning to ash. The Erebus moved like a plague, their twisted biomechanical horrors crawling over buildings, consuming infrastructure, absorbing everything into their growing mass. Concorde soldiers fought in the streets, but their weapons were useless. Every kill they made, the swarm adapted. Evolved. Craddock shoved Vor into an armored transport, slamming his fist against the emergency override. The doors hissed shut. The transport lifted, weaving through the collapsing skyline, but the windows showed nothing but loss. Vor was shaking. We were supposed to be safe here. The capital was impenetrable. Nothing is impenetrable. Craddock stared ahead, his mind running through every possible strategy, every maneuver, but there was no strategy for this. Vor turned, desperation in his voice. The humans. Craddock tensed. What about them? They can still stop this. Vor was practically begging. We send another message, tell them we'll do whatever they want. Give them control of the fleet, the government, everything. Craddock exhaled slowly. They already answered. Vor's mouth trembled. Then we beg again. We throw ourselves at their feet. We tell them it was all a mistake. We swear loyalty to their empire, You still don't understand, Craddock said quietly. Vor turned to him, eyes wide. What are you talking about? Craddock met his gaze, voice hollow. They're watching. Right now. The humans. I guarantee you they have eyes on this system, watching this burn. You think they don't have the firepower to intervene? You think they don't have fleets ready and waiting? Vor's mouth opened, but no words came out. Craddock leaned closer, voice dark. They're not coming because they want this to happen. Vor paled. Craddock continued. They warned us. They told us what was coming. And we spat in their faces. So now? They're making an example out of us. They're letting this happen so that the rest of the galaxy learns. Vor's breath came in shallow gasps. That's madness. They wouldn't. They would. Craddock's claws flexed. Because that's the difference between humans and the Concorde. You wanted to negotiate with the universe. They know you don't negotiate with extinction. The transport shuddered violently as an Erebus flyer tore past, its organic tendrils latching onto a nearby escape vessel. The ship twisted, screamed, collapsed in on itself, absorbed into the ever-growing hunger. Vor covered his face, sobbing. What do we do? What do we do? Craddock closed his eyes. We die.